Welcome to the first ever Tasting Tuesday, the day of the week where I give you a tip to make your whole life just a little bit tastier. I thought a natural starting point would be temperature because that's the first decision you're going to make before you ever get to tasting. The ideal beer serving temperature for almost all beers is between 38 and 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Big reason for that serving temperature is the relationship between CO2 and temperature. The colder a water-based solution is, the more CO2 it can hold in solution. So I thought I would show you that by leaving out a beer to get it totally room temperature. In my house, it's about 68 degrees, maybe almost down to 65. I like it cold in here. And then this guy I just pulled out of the fridge a minute ago. So it's right about 40 degrees. And you can see right away how much more CO2 is being held onto in the colder glass than this warm one that's really doesn't have much going on anymore. When I'm swirling this, nothing's happening. No head is really forming. Pretty much all of the gas has gone away. So you can just see here how much more CO2 can be held in solution at this temperature. So that is important because a huge part of the mouthfeel of beer is carbonation. And without all those bubbles and everything going on, it might just seem a little flabby and not what you were looking for, certainly not refreshing. It's also important because as this beer warms and CO2 is coming out of solution into the atmosphere, not only is CO2 coming out, but those molecules of CO2 are also carrying around along with them aroma compounds. So as a beer starts to warm up, you'll start to get more and more aroma coming out of the glass with it. You can swirl it like this to get some of that aroma, but also just the warming is gonna make that happen. So in a tasting class, you might hear someone say, oh, beers are more expressive as they get warm. And that's because the beer is literally expelling aroma molecules, aroma compounds, as it gets warmer. So it is literally expressing its flavor. That's one important aspect of temperature. The other aspect of temperature is how our taste receptors, which are housed within our taste buds, actually perceive flavors, tastes at different temperatures. As a tastant, which is a fun sciencey word for the thing that you're tasting, approaches body temperature, taste receptors for sweetness will perceive that as more sweet. So as it's moving from, say, 40 degrees out of your fridge toward 80 degrees, which is obviously much warmer than you'd want to drink a beer, but even as it's reaching 55, 60, you're going to start to perceive more of that sweetness. So maybe your first sip of a barley wine is just really bitter and all you're getting is roast in the nose and it's not that pleasant. As it warms, you'll start to perceive more of that sweetness that might balance those flavors and make it a better experience for you overall. So that's why often some of those bigger, more intense beers will be served above that 38 to 44 degree temperature. If you're just enjoying a beer and you're hanging out, it's great to start cold right out of the fridge and let it warm and see how it changes. But if you're tasting for a test or practicing to judge, it's a good idea to think about the situation that you'll actually be judging in. For the most part, beers will come out of the fridge, they'll need to be checked, they'll need to be put into glasses of flights, they'll need to be double checked, and then they'll be needed to give to the judges or given to you in your test. So when you're getting your sample to judge or on your Cicerone or BJCP test, they're going to be somewhere between these two temperatures. So it's not going to be holding on to as much carbonation as it was when it was cold. It's not going to be totally flat yet. And as it warms, some of that aroma has already escaped. So you need to think about practicing maybe closer to like a 45, even nearing 50 degree temperature, because you'll notice the body of the beer is a little bit flabbier. It's going to have a little less carbonation. And you might think the aroma is more dull, but really it's just expressing a little more slowly, and you might need to give it a little bit more of a swirl to release it a little bit more. But that swirling and sniffing is what we'll get into next week on Tasting Tuesday. So I will see you then. Two. It's a little bit of a dirty glass, so even more CO2 is coming out. But